Hey, everybody, welcome back to AFC Northerners. Woo! So glad to see all of you guys. Let's start off on the AFC North, starting out with the Bengals.
I'm Rob Gress's Bengals guy.
Dave Green, Browns guy.
Jan David Sutar, Ravens.
Gabriel Velati, Steelers guy.
Awesome. Well, guys, we have so much to talk about. We have a massive episode for you today. The 2026 NFL Combine in Indy just wrapped up. And it wasn't just fast, it was historic. We saw 40 times in 4 different positions and some athletes that just looked like they were built in a lab specifically to play in Baltimore. But while the future is looking bright in the draft, the present is getting kind of tense. It is March 4th. The franchise tag deadline has officially passed. Eric DeCosta, for me, has officially made a massive gamble. And so we're going to be talking about the $25 million question surrounding Tyler Linderbaum, potential departure, fan favorites in different teams, and a new head coaches, all of those things as far as they apply to the combine. And we're going to be breaking down the data with the elite fits from our AFC North tracker and the free agency news that you need to know. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so let's start off with the Bengals. So Rob, tell us
before that real quick, there was something that just happened. Steelers just cut Jonnu Smith. We just released Jonnu Smith.
Oh,
wow.
So it literally happened 20 minutes ago. I got an alert that yes, the Steelers have released Jonnu Smith, and so now we do not.
That's huge.
It's very big. So we're probably either going to go after that in free agency, or that might change the way the draft is happening a little bit for Steelers. Not much, I don't think, because we do have 12 draft picks. So, and I don't think it's going to really change positioning, but it's probably going to wind up being a key piece at some point.
For sure, for sure. Okay, well, let's kick.
Could be a possible spot for Njoku right there.
Yeah, that's true. That's valid.
You know, that's not a bad point either. Let's go over and start off with the Bengals for the NFL Combine. What's going on? Rob, what'd you think?
Well, I just want to point out, first of all, that like Joey Porter before him, a Steeler blocked a Bengal from doing what he was legally permitted to do and just started yapping on the field against the rules. But I don't know if there's going to be any penalty for that. But as for the Combine, what I want to say is that, like, the biggest news for me as a Bengals fan was that Rueben Bain's arms had fallen off a few weeks ago, and he's just left with hands, which is really good because his having such short arms means that some teams are just not going to look at him. And I take him to be a blue chip talent, right? Like, he's the kind of guy who can change the way the position is played, at least on our team. And so I really think there's a much better chance than before to get Bain. And I hope we do. And the Bengals have traditionally been happy with short-armed players. Like Trey was pretty short-armed, and Geno Atkins was pretty short-armed. So, I mean, Bain's smaller than them, arms-wise. But yeah, that's the biggest news for me. And also, Sonny Styles did really, really well, which could also move him up. Some team might pick him over Bain, too, which sort of increases our chances.
I don't know.
But I have sort of, yeah?
Oh, I was going to say, I didn't know if you heard that Kyle Hamilton, Baltimore Ravens, every kind of thing on the defense. He was saying that Sonny Styles frame mogged him. Like, they're almost exactly the same size and frame, but like Sonny Styles just completely outperformed Kyle Hamilton's performance in the Combine.
So, like, how old are we all? Is anybody here below 40?
I am. I'm 37.
Yeah, and we're talking about mogging.
Yeah. You got to keep up with the lingo for the kids.
So. I've been mogged by reality. So, so clavicular is now entering our discourse. Okay, but to me, that the picture has become clear. I think of who the Bengals are going to draft at 10. It's either going to be Bain, or it's going to be Caleb Downs, or it's going to be Peter Woods, or it's going to be Gerard McCoy or Mansour Delane, right? So either a cornerback, a defensive tackle, an edge, or there was one I missed. Well, I mentioned 5, but you can figure out who is who.
Awesome. Yeah, I have a lot of questions around like Gerald McCoy myself. I'm kind of curious about like his development. He's interesting. He's very interesting. But let's take this over to Browns, DGBG.
Honest to goodness, I think we're trading out of 6. I think we're
Okay.
going to drop down somewhere between 8 and 10, and it's Monroe Freeling is the pick. There's a true tackle right there, and we need tackles. We need a left tackle. We made the trade earlier this week for Titus Howard, and that's a great right tackle pick right there from Houston. But we got to address the other side of that line. And I think we're going to do that with Freeling, and I think we can get him at 8, 9 maybe. So I look for a trade down there. At 24, everything inside of me says wide receiver, and everything says Denzel Boston. I think you can wait till early second round and go KC Consumpcion, but I think at 24 they're going to take Boston right there, and I think we're coming back with the best available guard at the top of round 2. So my thoughts. I think if they were looking at like Fano or Mayoga, I think those guys are going to be moved inside. I don't think that they're big enough to play outside, hands
Mm.
wise. And I think your sleeper pick is Ihenka. I'm gonna botch the hell out of his name, but it's Acor.
That sounds like that sounds right.
Yeah, thank you. He's a sleeper pick, but he ain't a top 10 pick. I think maybe back end of the first, early second. They say, and he showed he has all the tools necessary, but he's only been playing football for 5 years. So is that a guy that you can plug and play right away, or is that a guy that's got to sit on the bench for 2 to 3 more seasons before he can get up and out there? So that's what my thought process, the way I'm feeling about this whole thing. You know, I think Monroe Freeling is the real deal, and I think he's a plug and play left tackle.
Mm. Yeah, he looked great. Did you see anything out of the combine that kind of surprised you, DGBG, or did anything that you were like, "Oh wow, this is great, this is horrible, winners, losers, etc."
The wide receiver, he didn't do any drills, or he did the drill, but he looked absolutely incompetent. And the talk is that maybe he is a gentleman who deliberately went out there and threw it in the tank, so he wouldn't get picked by a team inside the top 10, and he would be picked more towards the bottom, middle, or the bottom of the draft, possibly to the Patriots. Um,
It, that's a very
uh,
interesting conspiracy theory.
Hold on. Let me look. I'm going to Google this guy's name, wide receivers.
For sure. I really got a chance to study the combine in a way that I hadn't typically this year. It was really, really fun. But I want to focus on some of the elite standouts from the combine for me. First of all, like we were speaking earlier, the Hamilton clone, Sonny Styles out of Ohio State, with a 446 40-yard dash, 43 and a half vertical. I mean, he's just insane. And social media was buzzing when NFL Network put Sonny Styles side by side with Kyle Hamilton. And like we said earlier, even Hamilton joked he got frame mogged by Styles, who is almost exactly the same build, 6'5", 240, runs like a safety. And for me, in Jesse Minter's defense, he's like, if we wound up landing on ultimate chess piece, really, truly a great chess piece. Inside Mahler on the defensive line for me was Caleb Bangs out of Florida, 6'6", 327 pounds. He ran a 5:13.40 officially. And Banks, to me, is a freak. He missed time with a foot injury, but he just set Indy on fire. And also with Nandi Madubuike's neck injury status still kind of uncertain, Banks is, at pick 14 would look like an absolute lock. Tight end arms race for me, Kenyon Sadiq and Eli Stowers. I thought Sadiq, who ran a 4:39.40 at 240 pounds, he had a 43 and a half vertical, which is like all-time record, just insane. And also that Sadiq is just kind of like giving off Shannon Sharp vibes. And if we do, if it is likely that we lose Isaiah Likely, Eric DaCosta might need to double dip at a tight end just to give Lamar some more toys. So for me, like those are really, really interesting performers that I saw coming out of the combine. And out of that, from their draft needs, I mean, last year we fell from 54 sacks to I think it was 30 And that's why we're looking at guys like Akeem Mesidor or Shamar Stewart. Jeremiah says Mesidor plays like a Raven, which is interesting to hear from him. He's a heavy-handed edge setter who fits Minter's five-man front. And then, I want to talk about Lorenzo Styles, 10 yards, split king from Ohio State. Ohio State, by the way, just went crazy in this combine. Absolutely crazy. Larry Styles clocked a 149, the fastest of the entire combine. And with, thinking about it, like, I don't know where somebody like Geno Stone heads out to, but with him being on the Bengals, but that would be somebody that if I were in the Bengals, that feels like a prototypical, but he also feels typical Ravens as well, especially since we wound up with Geno Stone originally before he went to the Bengals. It's he's really something to talk about. It's really interesting, really, really interesting draft. Just so speedy, such a speedy draft. And then we got the Linderbaum drama. The Ravens, according to Eric DaCosta, made a sizable, marketable attempt to retain Linderbaum. Not really sure if that's going to work out or not. We did not use a franchise tag on him before the deadline, and he's repeatedly asking for $25 million in a year. And again, EDC said a market-setting offer. So if he hits the open market next week, he might be gone. And the Giants and the Chargers are lurking about that. And then, like I said, Isaiah Likely is probably as good as gone, top tier weapon. But Mark Andrews' extension is already on the books. I don't think the Baltimore is going to be able to match the offers that Likely will get in the upper edge market. And then on the edge market, thinking about it, keeping an eye on a trade for Max Crosby, or perhaps even reuniting with Max Crosby because he was a Raven for a little bit in training camp before he got picked up. And then Odafe Owe, who was with the Chargers and thrived under Minter, might be coming back to the Ravens, his home. And then Draymond Jones, Kyle Van Noy, they've hit free agency, so now we need a veteran presence. So watching the combine, it's a lot of fun watching these very young and talented defensive players really rise to the occasion. Really excited about that part. So yeah, I'm going to pass it over to Steelers. So Gabe, what did you get out of the combine?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things are ever moving right now, especially with having first year, just like with Browns, with you guys, all of us have brand new head coaches right now. And the interesting thing about our situation,
well, not all of us.
I didn't say the Bengals. I didn't say all of us. I said with all of us that have new head coaches.
Like the Ravens.
Yeah. I just like salt in the wound for the Bengals who still.
Okay. So this is a Bengals beat up podcast this week. I love it.
I welcome it.
But no, with and the interesting thing about the Steelers new head coach is now we are completely we have an offensive minded head coach, which is not really ever been the Steelers' MO when it comes to head coaches. They're usually younger and defensive minded. So I think that kind of changes what they were looking at the combine and everything this year. And we absolutely need a quarterback that's going to be the future. McCarthy does like Will Howard, but the question is, do we bring somebody in from the draft to kind of test Will Howard? And Aaron Rodgers, I'm not 100% sure if he's going to be back, because I just saw an article about McCarthy really liking Kyler Murray. So we could even go past Kyler Murray. But with that, in the combine, I was looking up some stuff and I was watching some stuff on, the quarterbacks that were there. And with meeting with Ty Simpson, with Drew Aller, with Carson Beck, but with the main guy who is pretty much everyone that's what is his name? Why am I blanking on his name? The top pick that's supposed to
Mendoza.
What? Mendoza.
Yeah.
The thing is that we've got 12 draft picks this year. So if they really want to go after Mendoza, I could see Pittsburgh actually like trading, because we've got three third round picks, 2 4th round picks, 2 6th and 2 7th. So I could see them trading the 21st pick plus a 3rd and a 7th, or a 4th and a 6th for going down. But the only reason they would go down is for Mendoza. But I don't really see that happening. So what I think was probably going to happen is, if anything, they'll trade down in the second, and get closer to one of the like 30, somewhere in the 30s, and try and go after a defense or an offensive guard, because the big three that we really need are quarterback, wide receiver, and offensive guard. But who I think we're going to take in the first is, I really liked what Omar Cooper did in the draft. Like, I really like him. I think Omar Cooper is going to be, I think he's going to be our guy. I think that's who they're going to go after. I was looking over all the stats with the stuff from the combine, but it just seems like Omar Cooper could be our guy at 21. I like him. I think he's fast. I think he's speedy. I think he's got good hands. But I really think that, and again, there's the other part to that too, is there's a lot of wide receivers in free agency right now that are good. There's a lot of people that are up for grabs. So it's kind of interesting to think about what's going to happen and who we're going to go after. Because again, like, you know, Romeo Doubs, Alec Pierce, Raheed Shaheed, and Juwan Jennings are all free agents right now. So, and we've got 42 million, and well, no, actually, sorry, we've got 49 mil now after getting rid of Jonnu Smith. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. But I think we're going to either see an offensive guard or a wide receiver go to the Steelers in the first round. And if not a guard in the first round, we're going to see in the second round, we're going to see the guard go. And then in the third, I'm looking with the 3 picks. If we don't trade down, we're looking at QB, running back, and either a cornerback safety, or we're looking at QB, cornerback, and a safety. I got to
ask, do you think this is the year that the Steelers break their record of drafting absolutely insane wide receivers?
I have no idea. Like, again, because yes, we've seen McCarthy as a head coach, but it's just going to depend. Hopefully he does. Hopefully with an offensive minded coach and someone who knows really how to evaluate wide receivers. I'm hoping that we don't deal with fucking, because it has been entirely too many over the years. When you look at Antonio Brown, when you look at Deontay Johnson, like, it's divas. But I think it was a Tomlin issue, honestly, because he was a player's coach. He was absolutely a player's coach. And I think he wanted to be buddy. And so when he's got his favorite wide receiver guy, sometimes it's hard to keep those personalities in check.
Yeah, totally agree. It's crazy. Yeah, the Steelers having 12 picks. The Browns, you have 10, right? DGBG, you have 10 picks. And I think that the Bengals, you have 7 or 8.
I think I was looking at it today and I saw 8, but then I looked at another site that said 10. So there might be some
it could be compensatory. It could be determined whether or not somebody gets cut or something like that.
We would get a compensatory third if we don't, if we don't get enough free agents, more than the free agents we lose after Trey goes.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that's what we want, right? Do we want to have so few free agents? We have a lot of needs. So I don't know, but I do have a few questions that came up during some of you guys talking. Like, so for DGBG, you were saying that you could see the Browns trading down. Do you think, is this something the Browns have historically done, and would they be willing to do that with the Bengals?
We did that last year. We moved out of the 3rd overall pick to go down to 1.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But is that typical, or?
Yeah, under Andrew Berry, he's always looking to stockpile the draft picks. So he's always, ever since we brought him on board 5-6 years ago, I would say 80% of the drafts he's managed to trade down at some point. And with the trade down to stockpile for next year, right? So if he takes that approach with, our top pick this year, right? He's looking at next year's draft at the quarterback position. So if you can get 2 first-round picks and then package that along with maybe another first the following year, or a second and a third, it gives you the ammunition to move up if there is a guy who jumps out at you. And that's like, watching him operate, that seems to be his MO, to have those picks to be able to move up. He's very crafty in that regard, and he's very crafty with the salary cap. That's why when I hear people talk about, oh, the Browns only have 10 million or 15 million in salary cap, that dude's going to backload a contract. He's going to, extend Deshaun Watson again, just spread that money out. And that way it frees up cap space for the immediate season. And if you look at the NFL, that cap continues to widen year after year. They're banging money off of the gambling now and stadium revenues, everything. So that money, and the more they expand into Europe,
Yeah.
it's more money all the way across the board.
I was just gonna
rise.
I was just gonna ask about that. Like, do you think that the expansion into Europe is going to be one of those things that is one of the reasons why we're seeing such an increase in salary cap recently? Because they added another 5 games, another five or so games in which begs the question. And I actually have a question on that. I know this isn't anything to do with the combine, but I'm starting to wonder if we're going to see American football be an actual worldwide leagues popping up across the world, simply because you look at games that happen in those countries, the stadiums are packed. They're fucking packed, and not just with the fans of the teams that are playing, but you see all kinds of jerseys just strewn about on people across there.
Yeah.
Well, if you go back and you look at our older videos and the demographics, we were getting a lot of viewership from Europe, from
that's
Latin
true.
America, from South America,
Finland.
That's right. Yeah.
So we were catching a lot of that viewership from over there. I don't see how they can't put a team or 2 teams over in Europe somewhere.
Yeah.
And then that schedule can be navigated and manipulated, where if a team goes over there to travel, they come out, they play the game, maybe they go down to the other team, and then they hit a bye.
And I'll be honest, I think 2028, with the Olympics, with flag football being in the Olympics, is kind of the inaugural test to see how the rest of the world kind of views and sees what this is. And then I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Mexican league pop up, or a straight Central Europe league pop up in either Spain or Germany or something like that, because that's the traveling between them isn't hard for those countries.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think that going international is definitely going to probably wind up opening up salary cap, and also extending the games, then having to deal with international time zones. It's definitely an interesting, evolution.
But then that goes into, does the Super Bowl evolve? And then if it does become a global thing, is it no longer just an American Super Bowl, that every Super Bowl could be played in Spain or in Finland or in Germany?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't see why, if you're going to put a team there or anywhere, how you cannot have that as an option on the table. I know what Super Bowls are booked, 5 years out, 6 years out, something like that.
Yeah.
So, if I'm going to put a team in Paris and a team in Nottingham, England, right? And they put up decent looking stadiums, 50, 60,000 seaters.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we know that they're going to pack the stadium because of what you were saying earlier. You look at how here in America, there's been spin-offs. You had the XFL League, you got the UFL League, the Canadian Football League. I think at this point in time, the American version of football is right to go globally.
I want to go back real quick to talk about each team's needs, as we come out, because another thing, we just learned about Jonnu Smith, but what was it, just yesterday the Bengals released Trey Hendrickson?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, released is not quite we're letting him negotiate with.
They declined to use the franchise.
That's
tag.
right. Yeah.
Right.
But
and he's
that historically doesn't play out well.
What do you mean?
Say
Typically, when you're allowed to go looking for other teams, they don't typically stay.
Oh no,
Yeah.
he's not staying. I mean, first of all, he doesn't really fit Al Golden's approach to defense. Like he's a very good pass rusher, but he's not a good run stopper, and that's very crucial to Golden's defensive identity. And he's 32, I think, and he just is coming off a pretty bad injury. And even 2 years ago, when he got 17 and a half sacks again, I think 7.5 of them were against Pittsburgh and the Raiders in 2 games. Like, I'm actually kind of wondering how much money Trey's actually going to end up getting. Like, I kind of wonder whether if we had tagged him, whether we would have ended up paying more than he actually gets.
How much? How old is Trey? How old
He's
is he?
32.
He's 32.
Oh, yeah.
His cap hit was 24 million this year if they had kept him.
Yeah, well, we paid him 30 million in 2025, but if we had tagged him, I think he would have been 30 million again, or 36, something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure he's going to get that. We'll see. I mean, I think there's only like 3 premier edge rushers in this free agent class. It's Trey, Jalen Phillips, I think, and there was a guy who was just the Minnesota Vikings, Grenard.
Grenard.
Yeah.
So I think actually Grenard might be the best of those guys.
Well, I have a question on that, and it just does kind of bring it back to the combine and everything in the draft class that's happening. Do you think, because there's a lot of depth when it comes to wide receiver, to cornerback, or to quarterback, and to edge in, like there's a lot of also defensive depth in this draft class of good people. And so like I'm wondering if this season and even the next coming up seasons are these people who are commanding or supposedly supposed to be commanding a bunch of money in their old age, like is that going to be do they have leverage? Like, does Trey Hendrickson have leverage with the talent that's in the combine this year within the draft class this year?
That's a great question. I'm not really sure, especially whenever I look at somebody like on the edge of Trey Moore from Texas.
Yeah.
It was just an insane talent. He's got bend production to step right into that kind of hybrid role that Trey was occupying. So, that's a really interesting question, because I don't know where. I mean, he might land on, a team that's just in need of depth, or he might land on a team that needs the kind of veteran experience if they wind up bringing in a bunch of linebackers that are younger from the combine or the draft to kind of shape them, kind of like we did with, we've done that a lot with linebackers. We did it with, whenever Odafe Owe was there, I think we brought in several veterans that were there, and I don't know why I can't think of the linebacker's name off the top of my head, right? But Odafe Owe called him Yoda. He was like, "This guy's Yoda."
I think one of the other things too is there's so many teams that are instead of building an actual franchise, they're in win right now mode, and that's why we've seen over the last probably 5 to 10 years or so, players who should not be getting the salaries that they are getting these salaries, and it was wrecking teams' fucking salary caps. And I mean, and that's why when I saw the news that Malik Willis, teams were going to pay $30 million a year for him, it's ridiculous. Like that's insane. He's played 22 games, had 10 touchdowns or something like that, and 8 interceptions, and then he's had 40 or so rushes with 6 touchdown or 4 touchdowns and 6 fumbles, and 4 of those were fumbles lost. And it's so with the talent that is coming in, I have a feeling this year is going to change a lot of things in the league, because I think that this panic that some teams have of, we need to get this position filled and we'll pay whatever the fuck we need to pay to get it filled, I don't think that's going to happen this year.
I also think that, kind of wrapping it back around to the combine, it made me think about, for the Bengals, starting off with the Bengals, the Bengals needed basically your entire defense replaced.
No, come on.
It feels pretty much like that. It feels like your defense is
our quarterbacks are good.
Yeah,
good.
Your offense is great. Your defense,
cornerbacks, his CDs.
Corner, your corners are okay.
Dax Hill's good, and
I love
Turner,
Geno Stone. He came
Turner.
from the Ravens as a defense, but you guys just lost.
Geno was the plant from you guys to mess us up, and mission accomplished. But he's not coming back. But Jordan Battle, the Bengals are super high on Jordan Battle, and I realize he didn't look that great last year. but he was like working with some of the most clueless linebackers of all time, which and I actually have confidence that those linebackers are going to start doing a lot better this year because they did start doing better in the second half of last season. But they see a lot in Jordan Battle as a good safety. We definitely need safeties. We definitely need defensive tackle. We could use edge, but it's not literally every position.
Are you sure?
We are okay at cornerback. Oh, and linebacker, we also need at least one veteran linebacker. But here's the thing. Although we have these needs in all these different places, like the needs we have are not gigantic in the sense that we need like Fred Warner like as a linebacker, right? We don't need the very best people. If we have like a league average linebacker, that'll be pretty good because we need to make sure that Demetrius Knight and Barrett Carter have just the right kind of guidance so that they can get the job done. And when it comes to like our defensive line, like think about Shamar Stewart, and I know he didn't do that great last year, but he is quite versatile on that front, and I think he could go inside to the defensive line. And then, if we do get Rueben Bain as an edge, and Miles Murphy's done really well as an edge this year. So I know people want to say that the Bengals defense is terrible, but I actually think it's pretty close to being average or even above average.
Well,
and
what number do you guys pick this year? What number do you guys pick?
10 is our first pick, and then 41, and then 72.
Okay.
And then after that, I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, I asked DGBG the question about trading up because I could see the Bengals actually trying this year to trade up if they're that hot on, say, Bain or something like that. And that might actually be a good call if you really think Bain is that good.
You don't think they'd go after Styles, linebacker wise?
No, because I think Styles is really good, and would they be happy to get Styles? Sure, but I think he'd be another rookie linebacker, and I don't know how well he'd be able to just immediately adjust to the NFL and do what he needs. That said, one of the things that like Al Golden did in the second half of the season is that he changed from like a read and react defense to a disruption defense. And that really worked for Demetrius and Carter because they just had to rush guys and like not try to anticipate. And, if he did that again with Styles, I'm sure Styles would be great at it. But the way I just see the tea leaves, listening to all the podcasts and reading all the articles I do, we seem to be more into defensive tackle than edge or linebacker because we're pretty like it's a really good market for free agents for linebackers. Like Chanel from Kansas City is somebody I think a lot of people think the Bengals are going to be targeting. I'm sure everybody's going to be targeting him, but like we might have a chance of getting him because he works really well with Al Golden's style. So, if we get Chanel, then we're not going to need Styles. And, I just think, if he were available, would we take him? Those guys like that don't come around much. So maybe we would, but I don't think he's going to be available.
I want to pivot over to the Browns real quick because if I'm right, DGBG, Andrew Berry made a splash by trading for the Texans OT Titus Howard, right?
Yeah.
And that immediately signing him to a 3-year, $63 million extension. So they are clearly doubling down on protecting the pocket in the new Todd Monken-led offense. And so I was thinking about the moves that, they also tendered 6 exclusive rights free agents, including, Andre Smith, who had a solid rookie year. So wide receiver depth in Malachi Corey, Jamari Thrash, and for the combine fits for me, the things that I was thinking about was like Bryce Lance, the wide receiver. Really liked him. Like he looks elite. And with Amari Cooper's future, always a topic, a big bodied playmaker like Lance really fits kind of Monken systems perfectly. And then on the trenches, you got a monster in Caleb Proctor, defensive lineman out of Southeast Louisiana, who he graded elite for me in my own tracker. And for me, he's kind of a high ceiling athlete that Cleveland loves to rotate alongside Myles Garrett. And I wasn't sure if any of those kind of caught your eye.
I think with that wide receiver talk, if we stay at 6, we stay right where we are. I think the pick's got to be Carnell Tate. I think he gets past the Giants at 5 because I can see the Giants taking Tyson or Lemon. Right, and Lemon is the guy I was talking about 15 minutes ago. But I'm not a fan of taking a wide receiver right there.
Mm.
I think that, like Gabe was saying, this class is so deep with wide receivers. I'm looking at a list. You can go on down. They've got Concepcion, who I mentioned, 31. Denzel Boston, I mentioned at 34. Um, Zachariah Branch, 59. Chris Brazel, the third, at 62. And you can just keep going. Chris Bell from Louisville at 102. So this class is really, really deep. What we really need is offensive linemen. We'll never figure out if Sanders is the guy or if Deshaun Watson can possibly come back and be the guy for a year or two, or if we're looking at next year of taking a pick, using a pick on a quarterback. We're never going to know if we don't address that offensive line. And this move to get Howard to play right tackle for the next 3 years, even though he's 29, so it'll take him through age 32, right, is the start to adding pieces to that line.
Yeah, I totally agree. I absolutely agree. I think it was a pretty smart pickup. I want to kind of move over to Pittsburgh for a second because I'm thinking about insurance, QB insurance specifically. If Rodgers walks, then the Steelers are in trouble. And I mean, I was looking at the AFC Northerners tracker.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so because again, McCarthy really likes Kyler Murray. I think if Rodgers walks, we've got options. I think Murray.
I was going to ask about the combine, like about if you got a chance to see Taylor Green, QB out of Arkansas. He's 6'6", ran a 4.36 in this 40, and like he just feels like the ultimate McCarthy project.
Is he a quarterback though?
Yeah,
or is he a tight end?
I mean, he went in as a QB, right?
No, he went in as a QB because he's trying to maximize his chances of getting a salary. But in college, he only completed 60% of his passes, and his team was 2-9.
So I didn't know that. Only 60%. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was also
really I think they're gonna honestly. I think Pittsburgh has a history with Penn State. I really like Drew Ayler. I really like him. I also think Ty Simpson is a good option. These are who they like. Even though you're not wrong on that, Pittsburgh's going to go after because you got to realize Omar Khan has been with Pittsburgh since 2001. He's been there for over 2 decades. He's been there for almost 3 decades, for the better
quarter of a century.
Yeah, he's been there for a quarter of a century.
Crazy.
It's insane. And he's been in positions of power since then. Like he's just constantly, and now I think that's why I don't think too much is gonna change. Like I think McCarthy's gonna try to have his influence, and I think Khan's gonna let McCarthy have specific influences. But again, this quarterback class isn't as thin as I think people really think it is, and I don't think there are too many terribly QB needy teams this year as there have been. And I really think it's going to be between Ty Simpson, Drew Ayler, or Carson Beck. Honestly, I think, and I think the only reason they're going to bring in a QB of that caliber is because McCarthy has gone on record many times saying he likes Will Howard. I think if we bring in an insurance policy, it's to either power up to see what Will Howard really can do against actual competition. Because Mason Rudolph is not competition. Rudolph just simply is not competition. Like Mason Rudolph has never been the fucking guy. As much as I like him, but it's either going to be that or it's going to be someone to usurp Will Howard. I think. Well,
I want to say that, like, I totally agree with you. I think that you make really good points there. I want to flip over real quick onto the secondary side of it. Because whenever I was watching the combine, we had a great safety like showing out in the combine, but for me, the one that I saw that kind of felt very Steelers-esque was Dylan Thineman.
Yes.
He's a ball hawk.
He is.
And honestly, like, I would be terrified if you guys wind up getting him because I think he could really revitalize the Steelers secondary. And
because we absolutely. Is he a safety or a cornerback? Safety. Yeah, because we really need someone. We really need someone back there. And the other thing that we need though too is we need a cornerback. We need someone that pairs well with JPJ. Like we just do not have anyone that pairs well enough with JPJ right now. there are a couple of guys who I liked and that looked not in like that we already have, but we need another lockdown. We need
I
another
agree.
lockdown.
Totally. The North is shifting, guys. Like Cincy is losing their best pass rusher. Cleveland is spending big on the line. Steelers are playing will he won't he with a 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers. And the Ravens are like, I don't even know. Like this is the first time drafting under this head coach, but with like such a good track record on drafting, but we only have 7 picks. So it's a really interesting time. So let's go ahead and we want to wrap up a look at this record-breaking 2026 NFL Combine. And we're going to move into the most critical phase of the offseason, the closing of the gap, if you will, between free agency and the draft. And that is free agency, the chess match over the next 21 days that could define the trajectory of 2026. And so starting with the Baltimore Ravens, I mean, legal tampering period is just days away. AFC North is already seeing major moves that will dictate the draft boards. Baltimore Ravens are trying to protect the pivot. All eyes are on Linderbaum. Ravens, like I said, made a market-setting offer, probably north of $22 million a year to keep him in B-more. If he hits the market, Ravens are going to fight some prices on the interior, especially with Daniel Falele and Isaiah Likely also testing free agency. I'm not so much worried about Falele. He's been like a good stand-in for that, but I haven't loved his play last year, especially. And then I just expect the Ravens to be aggressive in keeping their own before looking at veteran defensive line depth. So I want to pass this over to Rob on the Bengals to see what you're thinking about, a brief, like what you're thinking about free agents.
Yeah, for free agency, I'm pretty sure we're going to go looking for linebackers. We're going to go looking for safeties. And I think we're going to try to address edge in the draft. The problem is that we do need defensive tackle, and like it's a lean class in the draft, and it's a lean class also in the free agency market. So like it's a great year if you're a team who needs safeties. It's a bad year if you're a team who needs defensive tackles, and we're both. So I don't quite know what we're going to do there. Like we might just get Peter Woods, even if Bain is available, for all I know, just because we want to have a interior D guy. But after that, like, we just signed Dalton Reisler for like a very team-friendly deal.
Yeah, that's
Eisner.
right.
Yeah, he's super duper happy to be there.
Right?
Yeah. And so yeah, our offensive line, it's the first time since I want to say 2009 that we've had the same 5 starting offensive linemen in 2 years straight. So we're pretty confident of our offensive line. Obviously, quarterback, wide receivers are fine. Yeah, I really do think it's mainly just safeties and linebackers and free agency. And then depending on how we do there, that's going to determine how we draft, of course.
For sure.
Like it's all so connected. And as for the combine itself, I know we didn't get to say too much about it, but like I just hope that people like get really attracted to people with gaudy athletic performances and don't realize that the combine's not all that predictive. Like I hope people, put a lot of stock in those 40-yard dashes, which tell you almost nothing about any position, and ignore the 3-cone drill, which is the most predictive one. And that's the one that nobody wants to do.
I totally agree with you. I think that like seeing the amount of people that didn't perform in the 3-cone drill this year was a little telling, but also
it's dying. It's on its way out. Only 7 defensive
such a
tackles
good metric.
Yeah. Well, that's why they're not doing it, because they know there's these other ones are so noisy. They can like tell any story they want, whereas the 3-cone doesn't really lie. Nobody wants to have the light of truth on them.
I'm excited to see everybody's pro day too. What were you going to say, DGBG?
I was just going to say something real quick. I was just going to say, I think that's kind of why it's hard to do a true, actual like combine episode of anything, because it's all flash now.
Yeah. Well, I think that there is value in kind of getting to know some of these players that were maybe not on the same radar. So,
well, no, and the short arms thing actually matters. There are a number of teams that refuse to take a guy with lower than 33-inch arms.
Yeah.
And so Rueben Bain is now off, or 32 inches, depending on who they are, but he's off the charts now for some teams who just won't do it. And that's good for us.
So I want to move over to the Browns real quick, because Browns are trying to build stability with a brand new head coach. That's kind of the theme that I saw out of it. Was like it looks like they're going for stability out of already inking a deal with Titus Howard, trying to ensure either whether it's Deshaun Watson or if it's Shooter Sanders has bookends. And with the offensive line secured, the focus really is adding to a vertical threat in the receiver room, in my opinion. I was wondering about what you were thinking about free agency DGBG.
I'm going to say we are going to overpay for Lindenbaum, and he will be
Oh,
our start. He will be our starting center this coming year. I think the only competition is between us and the Giants, and I think us with what we've done coaching wise, I think that's more attractive. And plus, we're going to offer him a lot more money, I think. Um,
yeah,
After that, we're going to get a deal done, I think, with Devin Bush. And then we'll probably kick the tires around on looking at tight ends, maybe a wide receiver or two if there's anything out there. But other than that, I'm not going to really do much.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying, yeah.
I, I think afterwards, it's really about looking at the draft. Barry came out the other day, he did a press conference, and he was talking about how they're going to be active in free agency, like maybe a little bit more than they were last year, but not too much more. They're looking really at next year. Watson's contract comes off the books minus what gets extended over the course of the next 4 years, 5 years, but that ain't a big hit, you know. And the thought process is figure out what we have right now, start building an offensive line, try to keep the defense as young as we possibly can, right? So we're set up for next season. If we do have to go get a quarterback in the draft, he can come in and start rocking right away.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that there's some interesting. It, you make a good point, actually, which is kind of terrifying about Linderbaum going to the Browns. That could totally happen. I think the Giants are a more likely landing spot, but the Browns are not out of that conversation whatsoever to me. So moving over to, I know we talked briefly, Gabe, throughout the episode, but for Pittsburgh Steelers, what are you thinking about for as we go into free agency before the pro day for these rookies?
I was looking a lot at that. There's safety wise, if anything, Kim Curl. I do like Kim Curl. He's a free agent right now, so we may go after him just simply for depending on what we can get him for. We may go after him simply for what's the word I'm looking for? Not depth, but God, I can't even think right now.
You're sounding like me.
What?
A
Yeah,
clip
right.
on the Gazette.
No.
Continuity.
For being a veteran, like someone that's a veteran that can come
Experience.
Experience. There we go. Can't think of the fucking word experience. Wow.
Okay.
Thank you. We got there. I think they may bring him. I think they may kick the tires on him for to bring in some experience for safety because we really could use that right now. But I think that's one of the things we're going to identify in the draft. I think that if there's anyone who could reinvigorate and bring back Kyler Murray, I think it's McCarthy. So I think they're gonna see what they can get him for, if they can get him for not too much, because I don't see them trying to pay anyone 20 to 30 million a year right now.
Yeah.
You don't think Kyler's going to get 30 million? I mean, Daniel Jones is getting like 37.
I'm not saying Kyler's not going to. I'm saying I don't think Pittsburgh's going to pay 30 million for Kyler.
But then I don't think you're going to get him. Like,
I don't think so either.
Oh, okay. I thought you were pretty confident you were going to get him.
If anything, unless McCarthy really wants him. So it's also going to depend on Rodgers too, I think right now. But what I think we're going to do is I think we're going to go after depth on wide receiver. I think we're either going to go after Shaheed or Dobbs or Pierce. And I think Dobbs is probably the top of the list simply because of, especially if Rodgers stays, Dobbs is going to be the top of the list because of that connection that Rodgers and Dobbs already have. So
Awesome.
I think we're going to absolutely go after a wide receiver.
Yeah,
Hey, real quick, Gabe. If Murray isn't the guy, and who knows what goes on with Rodgers, right? And they're not thinking Will Howard could be the guy, or maybe he needs to be contested in camp. Thoughts on Tua?
No.
They say he's going to be a cap casualty. What do you say?
No, I say no. The amount of concussions that dude has had, I don't think anybody can turn him around. I don't think the reincarnation of Jesus Christ could bring that dude around.
Wow.
Oh my God.
No, he could heal him. But
That's true. He could heal him. He could heal him of all of his concussions. But no, I don't think there is a coach out there that can right that ship.
That's hilarious. Okay. All right. Amazing, guys. So we're coming up on our pro day gauntlet. It's there's going to be some really interesting dates coming up on the calendars for the pro days. I think March 18th is Penn State and Stanford. March 24th, Notre Dame, Cincinnati. March 25th, I think, is Ohio State. That might be right, DJBG. And then March 26th, Florida and Pittsburgh. You got really interesting folks coming out of there. Penn State, Stanford. You've got Danny Dennis Sutton, tight end Sam Roche. 29th out of Notre Dame and Cincinnati, Jeremiah Love, just coming out of potential lightning fast replacement. March 25th, Ohio State, big one, Sonny Style Show. It's like crazy athletic percentage at the combine was just insane. And then for Florida and Pittsburgh, Caleb Banks out of Florida, his 101.36 speed score, just so crazy. So now we are officially into March. As we approach April, I think that the strategy seems to be for all four teams starting to crystallize. And with the combine gave us great numbers, but pro days will give us the truth, as like one of my old coaches like to say. So we are officially on the clock. And so we're gonna go ahead and wrap this bad boy up. Go back around real quick if anybody has last thoughts, starting out with you, Rob.
Just this show normally ends with "fuck the Patriots." Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how come
Michigan.
it's what? Fuck Michigan.
Let's do Michigan.
I know. I did get a PhD in philosophy from Michigan, but when it comes to football, I'm happy to hate them.
Hey, all right.
Yeah,
As a Buckeye fan and a Notre Dame fan.
I'm a Notre Dame fan. Yes.
Yep. Kyle Hamilton's alma mater.
Indy.
Awesome. Browns. So DGBG. Any closing thoughts?
Screw you guys and go Browns.
as you should say. And Gabe, any closing thoughts?
I love you guys, but I also fucking hate you guys. So fuck y'all.
So it's fuck the Steelers or fuck the Patriots? Which is it?
It's fuck the Patriots, but it's also fuck all you guys too.
As a group, it is fuck the Patriots. What we say under our breath is something other. You've seen the group chat, Rob.
But it's fuck the Wolverines this time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we could just randomly pick a team to say F to.
There's always one.
Yeah.
Ravens, I think I feel like I've pretty much covered it. I'm really interested in seeing what happens in free agency in the next couple of days. I would love to see a Linderbaum and or likely reunion. That is going to do it for us, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, having this really, really fun combine experience that we really had a chance to dive deep into. We'll have another episode coming up in the next week or two. We start talking about free agency and things like that. It's going to be really, really exciting. And now we're going to sign off as we always do with
the Patriots.
Amazing. All right, guys, make sure you check us out. We're going to have more coming up. And until then, be safe, take care, and see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.